So let me introduce you to Brittany. So this is Brittany in the back. So recently, well, probably about 8 years ago, she graduated from college. So she graduated from college. She had $80,000 in student debt, and she got a job at the local community college earning $36,000 a year. So how do you reward yourself for this big accomplishment? Your first job, you're out of school. She said she bought a car for $20,000. So now, at the age of 22, she owes $100,000 in consumer debt, no mortgage in there, $100,000. And she thought, I'm doing great, living the American dream. Everything's awesome. But her mom, this is a picture of her mom was on the right. Her mom knew a little bit better, and at their church, they had a program called Financial Peace University. And so her mom started saying, hey, why don't you come with me? I'll pay for you to attend this course. And on top of that, every time you come with me, I'll take you out for dinner. And so the girl's like, hey, free food, that's awesome. And so she started attending, and it doesn't take very long to attend Financial Peace University for your eyes to go, oh my goodness, they open real big, and you're like, what have I done? What have I done? $100,000. And so she followed the principles taught in that course, and she spent she averaged over the next 5 years, $40,000 a year. And in 5 years, she paid off the entire amount. 5 years. 5 years. Matter of fact, if you know anything about Dave Ramsey, you can go to his headquarters and you can talk to him when you've paid your debt off, and you can do this debt-free cheer. This is her doing her debt-free cheer after 5 years, paying off $100,000 with an average of $40,000 a year income. I mean, you really make big sacrifices to do that. And that's what she did. And she said it was interesting. She said, I had a huge hole, tiny shovel, but a lot of faith in God. And she said, once her debt was gone, the blessings in her life just started coming. She got a substantial raise at work, and she's getting married shortly, and she's paying for her entire wedding with cash. She's not going back into debt. I absolutely love stories like that. I don't know if you've ever listened to the Dave Ramsey podcast. If you have, it's on any kind of podcast tool that you like to listen to, or YouTube, or it's just everywhere. I love stories like that because it's really inspiring when you see someone do it in a world like ours, because the message in the world that we live in is debt's no big deal. Everyone has it. You'll always have it. A little won't hurt you. A lot won't hurt you. And I needed to build credit. And we have all of these messages in our mind about the only way to really make it in this world is to have a lot of debt. And so people are doing it. But the interesting thing is, even though these are very common messages about debt in our world, there's another whole side to this. And this is a side that I don't think gets enough attention, is the consequences that are happening in our society because of the light attitude we have toward debt. Percentage of Americans living paycheck to paycheck in America now is up to 65%. That means every single month they run out of money before the month is over, and they just have to hang on until the paycheck comes. 65% of Americans live paycheck to paycheck, nothing left over. This is an amazing statistic. I remember it wasn't that long ago when we were about to break through the $1 trillion mark in credit card debt as a nation, and we did it. We did it! All right, we are now, wow, and we're racing towards 2 million. Nothing slows down the spending, nothing. 1.21 trillion in credit card debt alone. And the consequences of all that is 45% of Americans feel anxiety every single month about their finances. So almost half of all Americans feel anxiety about their finances right now. I just read, matter of fact, just this morning I got a headline on my phone, and I just flipped it and just scrolled through it a little bit, and it was about the number of Americans that have missed a second payment on their car. So they've gone 60 days and they can't afford to pay anything, and they're falling behind. So, and there's a huge percentage of Americans feeling that way right now. So imagine what they woke up to, their reality. I mean, they're scared. They're really scared. The average American now spends 30% of their take-home pay on debt payments alone. It's just constant. And on we can go with these stats. So I know, and it's been my goal, and I don't always do this, but it's been my goal for years that this is one of the topics that I try and touch on every single year. I try and talk about this subject every year because I know that you're not going to hear this anywhere else unless you happen to listen to a program like Dave Ramsey. So you're going to get it reinforced there. But other than that, everything else, every commercial is going to say, you want this, you need it to be happy. You can't be happy without it, so go get it. And why would you save and wait? Just get it now. That's what credit is for. That's what debt is for. So you can have it all and you don't have to wait for anything. And that's the message of our world. So I know that doing it once a year probably isn't enough, but it's what I try and commit to. And I know that I'm also talking to 3 groups of people today. So you're in one of these 3 groups. First group are people who have a lot of debt or who have debt, and you do kind of have it's not that serious attitude toward it. So I know that is common America, right? I've got debt, and it's no big deal. So there's that attitude. The second group of people are people who have debt, but they're really working hard to put that behind them. You're trying. You're trying to get your finances in order. You don't want to live that old way anymore. Many, many, many of you have taken Financial Peace University at some point in your past, and so you know the principles, and you're really working hard at it. And this is a reminder about the fact that you are on the right path. Keep up the good work and fight against the society's values that come out in all of our materialistic messages. And then there's a group of people here in this room who are debt-free, and you're like, yeah, it's great. This is the way to live, and so this is about reinforcing that value for you. It's like, yep, you've made the right choices to get to the point where you are, and we want to continue to encourage that. Some people think that it's just a matter of money. Brian, you don't know. If I just made more money, then I wouldn't have a problem. Do you know that it doesn't matter in America how much money you make? When you make more money, statistically, you just spend more money. Having more going in isn't going to change necessarily what you're experiencing about this. The number of people who live paycheck to paycheck who make over $150,000 is huge in America. So at some point, we have to actually change our habits. So that's what we're starting. We're going to start just a short little 2-week series, and I'm calling it "In God We Trust?" Question mark? Question mark, do we actually trust God, especially when it comes to money? It's easier to trust Him with our eternal souls than our cash. And we're going to talk about this. How do we escape from this debt trap that our world is so convinced that we all need to be in? So I want to ask you to open up your program. Inside, you'll find these notes. Would you grab your notes, grab a pen, and of course, welcome to those you're watching online. Love to hear we love it when we get emails from you. So if you go to our website at Peniel Church Life, you can get these notes as well. So I'm going to encourage you to do that, and let's jump right into this today. So we're just going to talk about 2 things. The very first thing is to really win with this subject, we have to get God's mindset on it, and we have to learn to hate debt. Learn to hate debt. So I know that this is going to be a challenging thought for some of you to really think of debt this way, that you actually hate it. And I want to be really clear about what I am saying and what I'm not saying. Because many of you have been a part of churches, or you've been around Christians who said that being in debt is a sin against God. I don't believe that. And there's no way to believe that once you read this verse in the Bible. Look at this. So God said to the nation of Israel, He said this, the Lord your God will bless you as He has promised you, and you will lend to many nations, but you will not borrow. So here's what He's saying. He's saying, I'm going to bless you so much as a nation that you'll never have to go into debt, but you'll be able to loan money out to the nations around you. You'll have so much extra. So if debt was a sin to God, God would not say, I'm going to make it so you don't have to sin by going into debt, but you're going to make all the nations around you sin by putting them in debt. Right? God would never say that. Ever. Ever. If it's wrong, He's not encouraging it. So one of the things we know, it's not a sin, and some churches and Christians will say that. So I wanted to clear that up at the beginning. But what God does say is it is incredibly dangerous. It always presumes on the future. And so that's why the Bible says things like this. First off, if you take a debt, the expectation from God is that you will repay. And again, that doesn't sound too controversial, except that there are a lot of people that don't. As I was prepping and reading my Bible this week and looking at the subject, I was struck by a word in this verse that I've read many times, but it really stood out to me this week. Look at what he says. The wicked borrow and never repay. I mean, this is the seriousness of this topic to God. If you take a debt, then in His mind, you are obligated to repay that debt, whatever it takes. And if you don't, then you fall into the camp of those He would consider. That's a wicked decision to make. Well, it's like a big word, isn't it? It just struck me as a big word. Like, God doesn't treat this as flippantly as many Americans do. It's serious. You've taken a debt. And part of why I think he says that is because of this. Debt, according to the Bible, puts us back in slavery. And there is no part of this that God wants for any human being. It enslaves us. It enslaves us. So look at this verse from Proverbs 22:7. And the borrower, it says, is the slave to the lender. So because we've made this obligation now, we have to repay it, and if we don't, there can be a lot of consequences for us. So I love the Dave Ramsey Show. Periodically, I'll go through these spurts where I'll just listen. So I remember listening once, and there was a woman who called in. She had just discovered that her husband, without her knowledge, had emptied out their retirement savings. All of their retirement money was gone. He had not talked to her about it. It wasn't like they owned brand new beautiful cars in the driveway. He just blew it. And this was shortly after she had discovered that her husband, again, he controlled the finances, didn't want her involvement, and she said on the call that he would have these times where he would be unemployed for a while, and he just wouldn't take anything other than upper management. And so he would be unemployed for years, and he would float things along. And she discovered after one of those times that he had jacked up $80,000 in credit card debt. And the only way to get out from that was to take all the equity out of the house and pay all the credit cards off. So now there's no equity in the house, they're close to retirement, and he spent all the retirement money too. It's like disastrous, right? Disastrous. It is enslaving. You should have heard the emotion. I mean, this is scary stuff for people. And how many of you think, oh, God sure wanted them to make that decision? Of course not. But because debt enslaves, it takes so much from us. The borrower is slave to the lender, and if you make that debt, then you're going to have to pay no matter what it costs you. The Bible also says this: it hurts our relationships. I'll let you write that down. It hurts our relationships. As I was listening to that call, I wondered if they would even survive as a couple. I really wondered if she'd stay with him after all that. It's not the first time. I mean, in my experience, I've seen people hide bills from their spouse or their partner, lie about expenses. It's like, and then when it comes out, it is destructive. I heard about that there was another call-in person who called in, and she was heartbroken. She said her husband, without her knowledge or permission, had taken on gotten a loan to buy a $750,000 building so that he could open his own photography studio. Because there's so much future in photography studios, don't you think? So, but it was okay because there were lots of tenants in the building. He was going to use the rents to cash flow this. And in the first 2 years, almost all the tenants left, didn't say why on the call. And so it had been 2 years without being able to pay for this $750,000 business loan. And they had just gotten served papers. They were being foreclosed on, and they might be forced into bankruptcy. And if they couldn't settle, it would mean the loss of their house. Surprise! I mean, it is so damaging in relationships when... And here's what happens. What I've seen over and over again is in relationships, spenders date and marry savers. And savers date and marry spenders. Seldom do you see the same kind get together. Seldom. So if it does happen, I've seen it, but it's rare. In most cases, the opposites attract. And then what do? Well, then they attack. So they attract first, and then they attack, because they're not on the same page. And you know, many of you have heard, the number one cause of divorce in America is listed as money. They're not on the same page. They're rowing in opposite directions. That's why these stories of these people hiding money is just so toxic. It's destructive, and many of these relationships will not survive it. And so how we handle debt has a huge impact on our relationships. And then there's this whole category I just called hidden costs. There are hidden costs to debt. And there's a lot of these. There's a lot of hidden costs when it comes to debt. So I just kind of clumped them together in different categories. Here's what I've seen in my life. When you have debt, other people get to keep the interest on your money rather than you keeping it. So if you have a car loan, then you're paying, I'm going to pay $15,000 for this car. Great, but you're going to pay $15,000 by the time you've paid off the payment, especially if you only pay the minimum, you're going to pay $25,000 for that car. And the $10,000 difference, the bank or the lending agency is going to keep, not you. They keep it. Haven't you ever noticed? I've been noticing this more recently. As a matter of fact, I noticed it, I thought about it because I was in a small town recently, and the only really nice building, the nicest building in the town was a brand new bank. It was beautiful. Nothing else in the town was beautiful, but that was beautiful. Why? Because they're keeping your interest. So when you don't have debt, and you put that money into something, guess who gets to keep that interest money? You do. Or you give it to them. So it's a hidden cost on debt. Emergencies don't overwhelm you especially when you're living fully the way God wants you to. Many Americans, and this is really sad. I think I have a slide. I'll get to that later. I had a situation, a year. This was 1 year of my life. We had one of our kids need wisdom teeth. It was wisdom teeth pulled, $3,000 for that one. Now, thankfully, again, we were out of debt at the time. We had a full emergency fund built up, and then all of this happened. Wisdom teeth cost $3,000. Then we took the other one to the dentist. Good news, they needed their wisdom teeth out too. So there went $6,000 in just 2 trips to the dentist. But that year, we had 5 surgeries in the family, and we had a $20,000 out-of-pocket deductible to pay. So $15,000 went to that. Then another one of our kids needed braces. And that's not so cheap. Then my car died, $4,000 to get that thing back up and running again. Then the other car died, $800 to get that one running. I'm not done with the year yet. Then we couldn't flush the toilets in the house for some strange reason. It was backing up in the drain in the basement. And so I snaked and snaked and snaked. You ever used one of those snakes to clean it out? Nothing worked. Finally, we had brought in a plumbing guy. They sent a camera down. The septic line had broken under the driveway. So they had to dig up the driveway, replace the pipe, and pour a new driveway. Same year, not done yet. $4,500 for that one. Then the dishwasher died. We didn't repair that. I washed dishes. Then the water softener died. And we had 2 kids in college and 2 weddings that year. That was 1 year. Isn't that crazy? Just imagine if we hadn't been debt-free before that year. I mean, can you imagine the terror we would have been experiencing every time we turned around? When you live paycheck to paycheck, and debt is just this tool that you use, which I would have earlier in my life so badly. Emergencies just overwhelm you. And you're going to have emergencies. Everybody does. You probably won't have a year like that, although some of you are like, Brian, I've had those years before, right? Like, oh. You miss out on opportunities when you have all of your money tied up in debt, like it's like that stat, 30% of people's take-home pay goes into debt payments. Then when an opportunity comes along, you don't have any money saved up to do it. So the only way to take advantage of that opportunity is more debt. And sometimes you just let it pass because you can't. You just don't want to do it. And for us as Christians, over and over and over again, the Bible says that our command is to use the resources we have to give and serve and help others. And many of you want to do more. Many people in our country want to do more, but they have nothing left to give. And so you miss out on opportunities to really participate in needs and helping people around you. These are like hidden costs to debt. So the only solution I've ever seen, and it was true for me too, is to win with debt, you have to learn to hate debt. You have to hate it to win with it in America. Any other attitude, I've never seen it work. And maybe there are examples of it, but I've never seen it. So it's the difference between, and I really want you to think about what is your thinking about debt? Because so many Americans think of debt like a puppy. It's like, hey, let's get a new puppy. Let's get another puppy. Puppies are fun and they're awesome. It's like, oh, I'll have a puppy in the house. It's awesome. It's great. Rather than what debt is a poisonous spider. Like, how many of you are like, let's go and get a poisonous spider today and let it loose in the house? Won't that be fun? Let's have that. That's dangerous. That's dangerous. It's like, and when you have the image in your mind, the right image in your mind, some of you are like, take that, slide down, Brian, you can't stand it, right? It's like, when you have the right image in your mind, it's easier to resist it. It's like, this is a dangerous thing. Why would I invite a poisonous spider into my house? I don't want it. Once you learn to emotionally hate it, that's when people start to win. And again, I have taught Financial Peace University 4 separate times. I've seen lots of people win with money, and I've seen some lose with money, and I've never seen anyone win until they hate debt. Because it's only when you really start to hate it that you do the second thing. You develop a plan to kill it. That's the only time I see people do this. Because it takes energy to fight all the materialistic messages in this world. It's exhausting. Because you're just missing out on everything. So the emotion creates the energy and allows you to drive forward and develop that plan to go ahead and kill the debt. So there's lots to say about this. I'm just going to highlight a couple of things that I've learned. And again, I'm telling you what worked in my life and what I've watched people, when I've watched people win, these are always present in their life. The very first thing is you create and live on a budget. Create and live on a budget. It's the very first thing. When I watch people win with money and they start to hate it and they're serious about changing it, the very first thing they do is they get a plan. And I want to show you this verse from Proverbs because there's a connection in the verse that I think is super important for what we're talking about today. God said this, it's the plans of the diligent that lead to profit, as surely as haste leads to poverty. So I want you to notice the connection in the Bible, in the book of Proverbs, between planning and profit. Now, of course, a spending plan for your life is called a budget. Here's what we know about budgets in America. 55% of Americans have no budget. 55% of Americans can't tell you how they spent their money last month. They have no idea. They spent it, it's gone, but they don't know where they spent it. This is just the reality of what it's like in our society right now. 55% have no idea where the money went. So what I like is what Dave Ramsey calls a zero-based budget. And I'm going to show you this, but if you go to his website at daveramsey.com, you can get all these tools for free. So you start with your incomes, like how much do you have for take-home pay? Then the next part of it is you list all the expenses you have, and you give every dollar a target until there's nothing left. So if you have some left over after paying all your bills, you would then the line would say savings, and you would put all the rest of it into savings or all the rest of it applied to your debt. And you do this every single month, nothing left over, and you make every dollar go where it needs to go. Otherwise, every dollar goes, and you're at the end of the month and like, where did it all go? Because it's gone. I don't know anyone who said to me, Brian, I have the opposite problem. I get to the end of the money, and the month I got so much money left over. I don't know where to put it all. Can you help me with that? Nobody ever says that to me. But I certainly have had the experience in my life where I get to the end of the month, especially before all of this, what I'm talking about today, where I'm like, where did it all go? It's gone. I don't know where it went. So when people win with money, they start to hate it, then they create a budget. So if you go on the website again, you can have so many stories like Philip here. Philip was in his late 50s. He had credit card debt, a 401k loan. He had a home equity line of credit, and he had student loans to help his daughter pay for college. He had over $100,000 in debt in his late 50s. $100,000 in consumer debt. That's not a mortgage. That's just debt. And then his church started offering this course called Financial Peace University. He thought, well, I'll just take it, to be supportive of the church. And he goes through, and just like that Brittany story at the beginning, eyes go like this, like, oh my goodness, I'm doing everything wrong. And he said the very first thing he did was he gave every dollar an assignment using a zero-based budget. Every single dollar. He said in the process, he saw all these things to cut down on in his lifestyle that he wasn't even aware of. He said, by making a budget, it showed everything I was spending money on that I didn't need to spend money on. It was interesting when he said that. I thought back. The very first time I set up a budget, one of the first things we did is we kept every receipt for the entire month. I mean, if you bought a stick of gum at Quick Trip, you got a receipt for it. And we just kept them. And then at the end of the month, we took all the receipts out and sorted them by category, and we were stunned where our money was going. If you'd had us predict before and after, we would have been completely wrong. Because it's subtle and sneaky, and it happens so easily. He started to win. It took him 3 years to pay off all of his debt and get debt-free. Once he started hating it, and then started telling his money where to go, rather than getting to the end of the month and go, where'd it go? You have either choice. So you create and live on a budget. Then the second thing you do is you save immediately $1,000 for an emergency fund. Immediately, $1,000 into an emergency fund. This ties into one of my favorite verses from Proverbs. In the house of the wise are stores of choice food and oil, but a foolish man devours all he has. There's wisdom in saving. That's what he's saying. He's saying, don't spend all you get, save some of it. And that's how wise people live. And so that's why, as quick as you can, Ramsey would say, save $1,000 into an emergency fund because you're going to have an emergency. Now, some of you are like, well, $1,000, that's not very much. You know, you can have one car repair that costs more than $1,000, right? Pretty easily. It's just the beginning thing. So you're going to take these steps in order. You put that $1,000 there. It's just to help you while you pay off your debt. Once the debt's gone, then you build 3 to 6 months of total take-home pay into an emergency fund. And that's crazy. The average American, I think I have a stat in here, has like $25 saved. There's a huge percentage of people over the age of 50 that have nothing saved at all. We don't take savings as a serious objective, even though, despite what Proverbs says about the importance of this, we just spend and spend. But I'll tell you, as somebody who had an emergency last year, I'm mighty grateful that we had a full 6 months of take-home pay in an emergency fund when I got laid off last January. Now, I'd love to say that because we had that emergency fund, it was so much more peaceful. It's like, no, it still wasn't. But I can only imagine how much more terrifying it had been if we'd have been in debt, no savings, and then the layoff. And there were seasons of my life where that could have happened. Thank God it wasn't last year. Because at least we knew financially we could go a long time, find the right job. You're going to have emergencies. So that's the goal of this. It's just to build a little buffer. Oh, there it is. Yeah, I did have the stat. Oh, it's 33% of Americans have no savings at all. I was listening to a heartbreaking story just this morning of a woman who called in, and her husband had tried to start his business. It had completely failed. He was upside down in his truck payment, and they were upside down in their house. Apparently they'd pulled equity out of it, and now the value of it had gone down in their market. And they had $25 to their name, and she was pregnant with their 4th child. The absolute fear in her voice. I mean, it's just heartbreaking. These stories are so common. They're so common. So then what do? Well, you implement a debt snowball. So you start tackling this. You got to take out the debt. And on the back of your notes, I put Ramsey's debt snowball. I have it up here on this slide too. A debt snowball is you list all your debts. First thing, list all of them. Then you make minimum payments on everything, but you put all the extra you can on the smallest one. Then you move on to the next smallest. And so when you pay off the small one, you take all the money you were paying on that one, you roll it to the next one. And then when you pay that one off, you take all that money and put it on the next one. And so that's the idea of a snowball. It gains steam with each debt that you pay off. And this is where Ramsey gets absolutely killed online. Because what they'll say is, well, that's not financially savvy. You should pay off the high interest ones first. And Ramsey is exactly right when he says this is about emotion. This is about winning. If you have 6 debts, and it's like, this one's only $250, this one's $4,000, this one's, student loans of $80,000, like that girl, well, we're going to tackle the 80 first. There's no emotion there. You're not going to get a win for a long time. But if you do this, it's like, all right, well, I'm going to live on beans and rice. I'm going to put everything I can into this $250 one, and I'm going to pay that off in 2 months. Wow, now I'm taking all of that money, $400, well, what would that be, $120 a month, I'm putting all of that onto the next one. Now, all of a sudden, this one is really going to shrink fast, and I'm going to start seeing real progress. And then I'm going to take all that money that I've been putting, I'm putting it on the next one, and there's an emotion to this that generates, and that's where you get the win. And it's like, oh my goodness, I'm seeing progress. He's exactly right. So much of our deficit spending, our debt, is emotional. We get into debt because of emotion, and we can get out of debt by using that same principle. So yes, obviously financially savvy people would pay the higher interest. Forget that. Just start paying them off, and it's a win for you. That's why it works. So, and then the big one, which the Proverbs is just all about, get new knowledge. Get new knowledge. I don't know of too many people who couldn't get a little bit better the way they handle money. And maybe some of you are. You're the exception. Most of us, we could use a little bit of fine-tuning on this one. And I just want to say, I get nothing from Financial Peace University in promoting this. Nothing. Dave Ramsey doesn't know my name. He's never heard of me. I get 0% back from getting people to sign up for a Financial Peace University course, okay? So I got nothing invested in this. You know why I'm so passionate about this and why I try and talk about this every year? Is because in 2007, I was completely upside down. I had a home equity line of credit that was almost maxed out. It was in the 20,000s. I think it was like 24,000. Almost done with that. I had a credit card completely maxed out, and I was working on other ones. We had little kind of debts with stores like Kohl's and places like that where, if you sign up today, you can get 10% off this purchase. Well, that's a good deal. Let's get your credit card too. And so we had all of these debts. And one day I answered the phone and it was a salesperson from the Ramsey organization. I'd never heard of him. And I'm like, oh man, I answered the phone and it's a salesperson. Drat. So he's like, hey, listen, we got this great course for the church. He said, I'll send you a free leader's kit if you promise just to look at it. And just to get him off the phone, I said, sure. So I got the kit. It sat on my desk, and it was DVDs in those days. And I popped a DVD in one day just to look at it so I could, fulfill my guilty conscience that I said I would look. And so I looked at it, and I'm like, oh, this is kind of interesting. And so out of just whatever, I reached out to 4 friends in the church, and I said, hey, let's get together. We'll go through this. I think it was an 11-week program back then. It's 9 weeks now. I said, let's go through this every week. Every Tuesday night, we'll meet at this house, and we'll just see if it's any good here. And that's how it all started. And I literally thought, this will be good for those other people. But me, I don't need this. Can you believe me? Aren't you at times just like, this guy is a ding-dong? You have to be thinking it over and over again. I think it'll be the thing I'm most embarrassed about in heaven when I get to heaven and I see all the times that I thought things like that. Because I'll tell you, by the second week, all 5 families watching this were broken. We were all eyes wide open, like, what have we done? What have we done? We've done pretty much everything wrong. And there was so much energy, and that's why you can take the course. You can take Financial Peace University. Let me show you this. You can buy it for yourself and do it online. I am a firm believer in getting in a group and doing it together because you're going to feel a little bit of shame and embarrassment and guilt as you go through it. And it helps to listen to all the other stories in the room. It's like, okay, phew, I am not. I'm normal. I'm normal. And it was so helpful for all of us to tell oh my goodness, can you believe I did this story? But there was also tremendous energy as we followed these steps together, and family after family. And then it was just a sweeping thing that became a part of our organization. And I can't even tell you how many families got debt-free, paid off their debt, built their emergency fund, lived below their means, and their lives were changed. And then you get the fun side of this. The fun side of this is when you're living God's way, and God puts it on your heart to help a family, you know what you do? You help the family, because you can. You want to give to help someone in need, you just do it. Because you're on the other side. That's the way more fun side. So, a couple of things as we finish up today. Really think about this. What's your attitude toward debt? Puppy? Or poisonous spider that you've let free in your house. It's your choice. You know that you're going to walk out of here and see lots and lots of emphasis on the puppy. It's a good thing. It's savvy. It's good for you. Oh, boy, resist that. Could you handle a $500 emergency without any new debt today? Could you handle that? If you had an emergency, and that's not even a big emergency, right? You can have a much bigger emergency than $500. But think about that. That might be a sign that this is something to give some attention to. Do you live on a budget? Are you careful to tell every dollar where to go every single month? Or does it just go? And you're like, where'd it go? So this is a skill. There's an art to it, but you can go to the Ramsey website today and start going through tools on how to develop one and live on it, because it'll change your life. And then if you're interested in FPU, here's what I want to challenge you to do. If you've never been through it, or some of you, if you've never been through it, been a long time, then all you have to do is on your little card here, on the comments, just put FPU, and we have a group that's going to be starting shortly. So if that's something that's interesting to you, let me know. I'm telling you, it was so important to me. This is me. This is what I'm like. I went through it the first time, and then I taught it three more times in a row. So I went through it 4 straight years to make sure I locked the concepts in my mind, because I know me, and I wanted to make sure that I didn't slip in this value. So if that's of any interest to you, you let us know. Otherwise, like I said, if you can do it, you don't want to wait, you can just jump online and start today. It'll really change your life. Let me have you bow your heads as we finish today. The way that we handle our money is a spiritual issue, and that's what I really want you to hear from this short 2-week series. It is really a spiritual issue, because ultimately what we're going to get into next week is that everything that we temporarily have on this earth is God's. And we give an account for how we manage the resources He has allowed us to have. And that's why this is really, really, really a spiritual topic. But there's another whole side to this. We're talking about debt. Christianity is powerful because it is about debt cancellation, but not a financial debt. It's about a spiritual debt that you and I owe, a debt caused by our sin that we could never repay. We had a debt that is beyond our ability to pay for. And God, out of His incredible love for us, sent His Son Jesus into the world to cancel that debt. That's what Christianity is. It's the ultimate the ultimate freedom and peace through Jesus Christ. And maybe some of you have given a lot of attention in your life to your money, but not to your soul. And today is a day when you can let Jesus Christ take this debt away from you. He paid on the cross in full for our debt. And if you'll allow Him to, He will cancel it. All you have to do is, in your heart, say something like this to Him. Say, Jesus, I need you to cancel my debt. I know I've done things that are wrong. And I'm asking for your gift of forgiveness today. In Jesus' name, amen. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch this service today. We hope as a church and pray that this was something that really helps connect you deeper to Jesus. That's what we're all about as a church. If you need to communicate with us, if you go online to penuelchurchlife.com, in the upper right-hand corner is a box that says, I said yes to Jesus. It also says, please pray for me. Just click on that, and it'll take you to a place where you can communicate with us as a church. So if you ever want any of the resources we mentioned in a service, go there and let us know. We'll gladly send them to you. Or if you made a decision to say yes to Jesus, or you have a prayer request, just let us know. And we're always glad to hear from the people who are watching online. And if we can continue to help you grow in your faith in any way, then we want to do that. So again, thank you. And our prayer is that you continue to grow and connect and find the true life that Jesus Christ is offering.